Did you know that when the mind is exposed to prolonged fear, it begins to disassociate to protect itself? This isn't just a coping mechanism, it's a rewiring of reality, turning memories into distortions. Tonight, in episode 10 of Shadows of the Mind, Jacob and Elias find themselves facing not just the sigil's wrath, but the fractured versions of themselves it creates. The asylum's walls groaned as if alive, cracks spiderwebbing across their surface. Dust and chunks of debris rained down, mixing with the pulsing glow of the sigil carved into the floor. The unrelenting hum vibrated through Jacob's skull, making it hard to think. "Elias!" Jacob shouted, his voice raw. He gripped a door frame to steady himself as the floor buckled. Across the room, Elias stood firm, his face lit by the erratic flicker of his flashlight and the sharp muzzle flashes of his gun. The shadows, liquid and writhing, moved like predators, retreating from Elias's shots but reforming moments later. "This isn't working," Elias yelled, his voice carrying an edge of panic. Jacob watched helplessly as the sigil flared, its light spreading cracks along the floor. The ground beneath him shifted, a jagged fissure opening between them. The abyss glowed with the sigil's sickly red light, and from its depths came a sound, low, guttural, and disturbingly human. "Elias!" Jacob shouted again as he fell to his knees, gripping the edge of the splintering floor. Elias lunged forward, his hand outstretched. Their fingers brushed, but before Elias could grab him, the sigil surged with a blinding light. The world dissolved into chaos. Jacob's mind filled with disjointed images, a child's scream, a snow-covered street, a pair of hands reaching for help. He felt himself falling, the light pulling him into nothingness. Jacob woke gasping for air, his body aching from the cold floor beneath him. The air was icy, biting into his skin through his coat. His breath came in short, visible bursts, hanging unnaturally long in the still air. His flashlight lay a few feet away, its beam flickering weakly. When he reached for it, his hand brushed something sharp, a shard of glass. He held it up, noticing how it reflected the dim light in the hallway. As Jacob rose unsteadily, he saw where he was. The hallway stretched endlessly, its walls lined with portraits. Frost clung to their ornate frames, and the faces within seemed frozen in time. He stepped closer, shining his flashlight on one of them. It was his own face staring back. Jacob stumbled backward, his breath catching. The face in the portrait was wrong, gaunt and hollow-eyed with a faint, mocking smirk. "This can't be real," he muttered, shaking his head. A sound broke the silence, a faint, high-pitched giggle. It echoed through the hallway, childlike yet distorted, sending a chill down his spine. Jacob spun around, his flashlight darting toward the sound, but the corridor remained empty. The laughter grew louder, accompanied by faint footsteps. At the far end of the hallway, a door creaked open, its surface etched with the sigil's faint glow. Jacob hesitated. The air around him felt charged, pressing him toward the door. When he stepped through, he found himself in a dimly lit study. The walls were lined with bookshelves, their contents decaying with age. In the center of the room sat a desk, and on it lay a journal. Jacob approached cautiously, his flashlight illuminating the open pages. The handwriting was jagged, scrawled in uneven lines. "You've seen it. You've always seen it. It's waiting." The sigil carved into the desk began to glow, casting shifting shadows across the room. The laughter returned, louder and more sinister, as a voice whispered, "You can't hide." Elias awoke to the sound of distant machinery humming and water dripping steadily onto metal. He groaned, clutching his shoulder as he pushed himself upright. The factory around him was massive, its walls streaked with rust and grime. Machinery loomed like forgotten relics, their gears frozen in time. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of oil and decay. The sigil's hum was everywhere, vibrating through the floor and into his chest. Elias scanned the room, his flashlight revealing patches of frost creeping along the walls. His gun was still in his hand, but his fingers twitched uncontrollably, the motion sharp and unnatural. A table nearby caught his eye. It was piled with papers, their edges curling with age. At the center sat a recording device, its red light blinking faintly. Elias pressed play, and a distorted voice filled the silence. Day 43. Subject 237 exhibits severe temporal disorientation. The sigil warps perception and memory, creating a labyrinth the mind cannot escape. It binds its victims until they break. The recording ended abruptly. Elias sifted through the papers, his heart pounding, as he spotted his own name scrawled at the top of one sheet. Beneath it was a single line: "Return to the mansion." Footsteps echoed behind him. He spun around, his gun raised, as a frail woman stepped into the edge of his flashlight beam. Her hollow eyes locked onto his as she whispered, "You shouldn't be here. It's waiting for you." Jacob stumbled through the mansion's twisting corridors, his flashlight barely cutting through the suffocating darkness. The walls seemed alive, their surfaces shifting and breathing like living organisms. "You're not alone," a voice said, low and steady. Jacob froze, turning his flashlight toward the sound. At the end of the hallway stood a man in a tattered coat, his face obscured by the shadows. "Who are you?" Jacob demanded, his voice trembling. The man stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Someone who knows what the sigil wants and what it will take. Jacob's hands clenched into fists. "What do you want from me?" The man smiled faintly. "It's not about what I want. It's about what you'll give." Before Jacob could respond, the sigil's glow intensified and the hallway began to collapse. The man disappeared into the shadows, leaving Jacob alone. Jacob staggered into a cavernous space, the sigil glowing brilliantly at its center. The air was charged, and the ground beneath him hummed with energy. From the opposite side, Elias emerged, his gun raised. Their eyes met, tension hanging heavy in the silence. "You," Elias said, his voice hard. "How are you still alive?" Jacob shook his head. "I don't know, but I think we're running out of time." The sigil erupted, cracks spreading through the floor as an endless void opened beneath them. A guttural voice echoed around them. "You are both part of the design. Now see what lies beyond the threshold." The light consumed them. Thank you for watching episode 10 of Shadows of the Mind. Jacob and Elias have crossed the threshold, but what lies beyond? Tune in next Thursday to uncover the chilling truth. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share as we delve deeper into the darkest corners of fear.